So can you tell us a little bit about your experience with recounts and what lessons have been learned from some of the most recent recounts you've seen?
Sure. So I have had I've been fortunate to observe not only one, but two statewide recounts here in Minnesota. The first one was in 2008, the U.S. Senate race, which is fairly well known. The second one was the next federal election cycle in 2010, where we had a gubernatorial recount. For both of those, I helped to organize with the League of Women Voters. To my knowledge, I think it's the first ever statewide nonpartisan observation of a recount. And for us, it was a fabulous civics lesson. And in terms of the lessons learned, one of the reasons it was such a great civics lesson because it was incredibly transparent. Every single step along the way was broadcast via live on streaming. The vote totals were posted every day in the newspapers. The challenged ballots, including the frivolous challenged ballots and the infamous lizard people, the person who voted for the vote in for lizard people, which got a lot of press, all of those things were posted online, and we learned the very, very many and creative ways that people in Minnesota, and I assume this is true for other states, how they mark their ballots, and what that presents to us, and this is one of the contentious points of the recount, is how you interpret voter intent when it's not clear. So many, many lessons, but I would say from a citizen observation, nonpartisan perspective, the transparency was probably one of the huge lessons. Depending on who you talk to, you're going to get different answers about the lessons learned. If you talk to the campaigns and the attorneys representing the campaigns, they're going to have a little different perspective than me, because I try to stay outside of that, but they're going to probably talk about how it's really important to be really, really well prepared. For the election officials, they also learned a lot of good lessons about how to streamline and improve some of the recount procedures and processes, which we did. So by the time we got to 2010, the recount went a lot quicker and was a lot more smooth and a little more boring, but boring is good when it comes to recounts.
So what advice do you have for legislators when they're thinking about crafting or creating recount law?
Well, as a matter of fact, we just completed a document a few months ago, and I'm going to hold it up right here. So this is the Recount Principles and Best Practices document. I was one of 4 executive co-authors, and there was a panel of recount experts that reviewed this. We spent a full year working on this, and we tried to keep this concise. As I've learned, it's harder to write something short than it is to write something long. So the core portion of this document is only 12 pages. All of the issues that we cover here are issues that I would recommend that legislators keep in mind when they craft recount laws. Following this document, we believe, will help prepare legislators and election officials and other stakeholders as they conduct recounts. All of the 4 co-authors, again bipartisan, all of the 4 co-authors represent states that have had recent high-profile recounts. So we have Minnesota with myself and Secretary of State Mark Ritchie. You have Jane Platten from Ohio, the former county elections director for Cuyahoga, the largest county in Ohio, and then former Secretary of State Sam Reed from Washington. And in 2004, Washington and Ohio both had recounts, but Ohio, the outcome of the presidential race hinged on the outcome of the recount in Ohio. And that was also the same year there was the recount of the gubernatorial race in Washington, which didn't get as much press. But we talk about a number of different issues. I'll highlight a few. We talk about some important precursors that we really hope are in place before any state would go into a recount, and those would be things like voter verified paper records. So there's an independent record to verify the electronic tally of the initial election day outcome. chain of custody, secure chain of custody to be able to track the handling of the ballots and all related materials. Ballot reconciliation, ballot accounting to make sure that the number of ballots that were actually delivered to the polling place reconciled with the election night results from that precinct. So those are some precursors. We also recommend, for example, something we call the close vote margin recount. So we would like to see for every single election race, election contest, where if the margin was very, if it's low enough that it would be eligible for a publicly funded, a taxpayer-funded recount. The challenge here, I know that sounds like a big ask. I think the challenge is to set that trigger very low. And if it's set very low, then those recounts wouldn't happen that often. The average recount trigger for the couple dozen states that do have close vote margin recounts is 0.4%. We recommend a trigger well below that. And in Minnesota, we reduced our recount trigger from 0.5 to 0.25 because 0.5 was way too high. So those are just I could go into some more details, but that gives you a little bit of flavor. We discuss voter intent, we discuss observers and challengers, and impartiality. So you can think of this as kind of a playbook for how to be prepared for a recount.
Great. Thanks very much.
You're welcome.